yes. I've always been a Tribe fan through all the lean years, through the good years. It's always been my team. I'm a Clevelander. I love baseball. I've been a fan since I'm 5 years old. I learned how to write and read by looking at Indians' box scores. I have my MA from Cleveland State in American history, and it's from post-Civil War to the Depression years. So I heavily concentrated on the early 20th century, and that kind of morphed into I want to write about the Indians and history, and that's the time period I know. My first book was Addy Joss, King of the Pitchers, about one of our great pitchers from the very first part of the 20th century. He died at 31 from tubercular meningitis at the height of his career. Then came The Best They Could Be about the 1920 team. I thought in 1916 when Charles Summer sold the team to Jim Dunn, that'd be a good time to pick things up. And of course, 4 years later, they won the World Series. So I knew there was a story there. I looked at my current book, No Money, No Beer, No Pennants, is that, again, a change of ownership in 1927, the Depression coming out of nowhere and really making life difficult for everybody. I wanted to see how did baseball survive and how did Cleveland baseball survive. I knew Municipal Stadium was built then, and I never knew the real story. How did it get built, what went into it, and what the problems were that occurred. The political fighting about the stadium really surprised me. I didn't know that somebody filed a lawsuit and stopped construction for a year and a half. Some of the player stories, I didn't know much about some of the players and how they got to the major leagues and the obstacles that they overcame. One that really surprised me was Bruce Campbell was an outfielder in the mid-30s. He got spinal meningitis during the season, nearly passed away. And then he came back and had a comeback, and people were astounded. And then, even though the odds were about 98% against it, he caught it a second time. Was seriously ill, he recovered and came back to baseball even again. And we bring in 17-year-old Bob Feller to talk about his start, how we got him and how we almost lost him due to a technicality in the way he was signed. The Hall of Fame in Cooperstown has player and owner files. I get those and look through their files. They have clippings, newspaper articles, letters from the players, things from the family. That gives me good insight and background. Then I'll go down to Cleveland Public Library and look at microfilm from the press, the Plain Dealer, the old Cleveland News and Cleveland Leader, look at the game stories and day-to-day things and get a pretty good look there. Also, I look at Baseball Magazine that go way back through about 1908 up to through the 1940s, I believe, and lots of great stories about the players, lots of background stories about Major League Baseball. And I've been fairly lucky to find grandchildren and cousins of some of the ball players and get some inside stories from them. So all those things together get you material for a book. And I'm thinking about the late 30s up to World War II into about 1942 to show how the country and Cleveland reacted to World War II and what happened to the players. So many of them either got drafted or enlisted, and baseball continued, but many of the great players were overseas, especially Bob Feller was one who went right away. So I'm looking at that time period. I think that's going to be the next direction I go.